What's going on, everybody? Kyle here. I hope you're having an amazing Tuesday start to your week for you. And I am so sorry that I missed last week. I had something come up last minute that I just couldn't jump on for. So we pushed last week's call to this week. And so we are going to be talking today all about the reasons, most common reasons why real estate agents fail out of the business. And then even more important than that, what you can do to combat that and to try and make sure that you don't become part of the statistics of real estate agents that fail out within their first few years. And so that's what we're going to be talking all about today. So I appreciate you jumping on. We got a lot of people tuning in already. So good to see everybody here. And while you're at it, go ahead and let me know where it is that you are watching from. So I want to see who all is in here. Start blowing up that chat. Let's go ahead. And then also what I wanted to say too is if you have any reasons why you feel that real estate agents fail, maybe it's, agents you've known in the past that have gotten out of the business, or even if you've thought about getting out of the business, why would that be? What would your reason be? What would cause you to get out of the business? And so I actually, before this call, so in the last, I think it was like maybe 2 weeks ago, I put a couple posts up on Facebook just to get some people's opinions on this exact topic. And I compiled all of the answers, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And so I also have, starting from the most frequently responded answer all the way down to, ones where people just said, one-off kind of deals. And so we're going to start with the most frequently answered topic, or the most frequently answered response as far as why real estate agents fail. And before I say what that is, go ahead and put in the comments what you think that the number one answer other agents said people fail out of the businesses. So I want to see, what do you think the number one answer is? All right. While we're doing that here, I'm going to shout out a couple people. We've got, let's see, beautiful day in Texas Hill Country. All right. Oh yeah, heck yeah. I see you. I love it. All right, Nora, you've got Corpus Christi in the house. All right. Pleasant Hill, California. What's up, Terry? How's it going? We got another California, Pasadena. Awesome. Art. Who else? Anaheim, California. Man, California really tuning in. Vanessa, San Antonio, Texas. All right. Let's see here. We got another Southern California. Cynthia, welcome. Thanks for jumping on. Georgia Weaver is from Storm Lake, Iowa. All right. Let's see. We've got who? All right. All right. So here's our first response. We got Jimmy says, an overwhelming learning curve. Very good. Yeah, that is very true. It was. So if this was, what is it? Price is Right. Not Price is Right. If this was, oh geez, now I can't even think of the show where they buzz in with the top answer, Family Feud. You'd be on the board. Somebody definitely did answer that, but that's not the number one. And so let's see, we got Stacy, my mom. What's going on, Mom? Lack of mentorship. That's on the board too. We'll be talking about that. But that is not the number one answer. Let's see. All right. I see the number one answer here. Here we go. Nora says lack of consistency. Perfect. That was the most answered or most responded answer by anybody on Facebook by far. Was consistency. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to talk about that as far as why agents fail. It's a lack of consistency. I really do believe, because this is kind of a transitional career, like, not a whole lot of people start out in real estate. Like, I was 22 when I got started in real estate, and this is all I know. Right. So like, it was a different perspective for me, but a lot of people, maybe they've worked other careers or other jobs for a decade or more, and then they decide to get into real estate. And it's a very difficult transition, especially when you're used to kind of being told what to do, where to be, how often you need to work. You're getting paid either by the hour or you're getting paid a salary. So you've got to show up all the time. When you get into real estate, it's freedom city, right? Like you can do whatever you want, you can not do whatever you want. And so with consistency, I think that that's where, where people come into the business and they just aren't holding themselves accountable to the typical responsibilities that a successful real estate agent would make. And so, I mean, I think we all know this. And if you're struggling with consistency, we all go through it. I definitely, even still to today, struggle with always being consistent. I will say though that, I feel like the reason why I've been successful in real estate is because I've been more consistent than most people, right? So it's something that I actively work on, but I don't think everybody is 100% consistent. But some of the different ways that I feel like you can kind of work on being more consistent are, number one, having an accountability partner, having somebody who you can, basically, hold them accountable. They hold you accountable. It's, who you're kind of surrounding yourself with in your network. If you are surrounding yourself with top producers, people who are working a lot, without anybody telling them to do so, it's going to encourage you. It's going to motivate you to work even when people aren't looking, right? I know, like for me, like building this YouTube channel, it's one of those things where I put all of this work in behind the scenes. Like nobody knew what I was doing for a year or two, even before my channel started getting big. But I was still putting in the work. It'd been real easy for me just to take time off and not work or not put videos out. Nobody was telling me I had to do that, but I knew what the outcome could be. And that motivated me enough to be consistent and to keep producing even when nobody was looking. And so, but also at the same time, I say that I also was hanging out. I was networking with people that were into video, into YouTube. And, and I saw what their channels were doing. I saw they would produce a video. So I was like, I got to produce a video. And it's the same idea for real estate, right? Like when I was, very, working real estate every single day, all of my peers, how many houses did you sell this month? How many new clients did you pick up? Like these were the conversations we were constantly having. And it kept me motivated to keep working when nobody was looking. And so I think, that's where, accountability is a big part of it. Who you're, talking with on a daily basis is a big part of it. But ultimately, that's what leads to your consistency. There's also some other things that you can do, when you're just sitting in your office by yourself. Maybe you aren't, talking with other agents at this point in time. And now it's like where the rubber meets the road and you've got to go out there and actually put the work in. There's some things that you can do to help with consistency on that avenue as well. Which for me, it looked like creating what's called a greatness tracker. I got this actually from the Core Training. It's a coaching company that does mortgage lenders and real estate agents. And I got the greatness tracker a long time ago. And it's a super simple document. I mean, literally, it is just, I'll see if I can pull it up here, show you so you know what I'm talking about. If you've used the greatness tracker, go ahead and if you know what I'm talking about, put it in the comments here while I pull this up. Let's see here. Here we go. I think I've got it right here. There we go. I'm going to share this. There we go. We will add that to the screen. Oh, I got to make that bigger. There we go. All right. So here's your greatness tracker. Literally, it's just, the different activities that you want to do throughout the week. And you can see here, like face-to-face. So my goal every single week was to have 15 face-to-face appointments. So this could be with buyers and seller appointments, where I'm actually meeting, for a listing appointment or a buyer consultation. It could have been even just meeting for coffee. Like, they weren't really actually looking to buy or sell at this point in time, but it was me just taking somebody out for my sphere of influence to kind of like meet with them. It can also just be like a networking event. I met somebody face to face, or I met multiple people face to face. I've got their information. I conversed with them for a while, but my goal every week was 15, right? Minimum. And so I'd be tracking that stuff. Breaking bread. That's where, again, you can either, do coffees, lunches, dinners, drinks, whatever you want. But my goal for that was 5 times a week, meeting with people. Great phone calls. So every week I had a goal of 60 great phone calls. Now this is more difficult than it sounds, because this isn't like 60 phone calls, right? Like that's the difference with great phone calls and phone calls. Like I wasn't just calling somebody. Like if I left a message or if I didn't get a hold of them, it didn't count for me. For me to write the name down, as far as, I actually had a great phone call. I actually had to have a conversation with them, right? That was more than just like, hey, I'm busy, can I call you back, or something like that. So if I didn't, actually get to talk to them, I didn't mark it down as a great phone call. So, I mean, realistically, to do 60 great phone calls in a week, I was actually calling about 100 to 150 people on any given week, right? So that's a lot of people. But I mean, I included there, when I was doing expireds, for sale by owners, sphere of influence, all that good stuff is what goes in there. Seminars attended. So these were just like, events where I'm like training focused. But I also put in there, like, if it was like a networking event, and I wanted to do one to two of those a week, my hours prospected was 21 hours prospected a week, which, again, I mean, 21 hours, that's what it's going to take if you're going to be making 100 to 150 phone calls and you're going to be talking to 60 people, right? So it's going to take about that amount of time. And then I would write 10 handwritten thank you cards every single week, without fail. Most of the time it was to people that I either broke bread with, that I met face to face, anything like that. So if I met with them face to face, I put their names down. If I broke bread with them, I put their names down, and then I always would write them a thank you card. Or, like I say, if I saw something on Facebook that somebody was doing and it was special, it was their anniversary or something, a milestone, I'd send them a thank you card. And those are all handwritten thank you cards. It still makes a big difference, even today. So leads, I was always trying to add 10 new leads into my database every single week. And I would shoot for 3 deals, which deals in my, like, the way I wrote down a deal was either it was a buyer buyer representation agreement, or a listing agreement signed, right? Like, that to me was a deal because it was in my control. Now, obviously, I mean, because there was a lot of deals that would fall through, if I had a listing and, and it didn't sell, if I had a buyer and they didn't end up, purchasing a home, or maybe they couldn't purchase a home. But every week, my goal was to sign up 3 new clients, right? And that constituted a deal for me, right? So 3 deals. That's it. Like, this is honestly what helped me stay consistent, because, like, so, the other part, and we'll talk about this here too, as far as why agents fail, is I hired a real estate coach, right? And I still have a coach today. And, but what I did back then, specifically with this core greatness tracker, is I turned these in. I'd meet with them every single month. I'd bring 4 of these every single meeting with me, and he would look at all of my greatness trackers, right? Like, so that was very, like, I was held accountable. But I also, just went through the process. I just did this thing every single day, every single week. And what's nice about it, I mean, being consistent doesn't mean you have to show up every single day. There was days, like, let's say a Tuesday, that I missed. Well, then it just means I got to make up for it, right? But throughout the week, I've got to be consistent, like, week over week. And so, obviously, if you miss a day, sometimes that can get a little bit harder, because then you're like, oh, shoot, I missed a day. Maybe, I'm not going to hit my goals. Maybe I'll just take this week off. And all those things kind of start spiraling. So I tried not to even really, I try to be consistent even day to day. But even then, you're still not going to be 100% perfect. So as long as you can be week to week, accountable, I think that's very, very strong. That's going to separate you from just agents that are just, not accountable to anything. And, and they're just kind of flying by the seat of their pants on, what they should be doing every single day. So, all right. So that's the greatness tracker. That was consistency. That is the number one reason why agents fail. All right. Number 2, what do y'all think the number 2 reason why agents fail out in the business? I'd be curious to see what you guys think here. I'm going to read through a couple other people here that, so let's see. We had Vincent from Spain. Nice. Good to see you on here. Jimmy is from Orlando, Florida. Nice to have you on here, Jimmy. All right. Mark says, have to treat it like a business. That is on the list. We will get to that one for sure. Matchin says, probably quit too soon. Yes, that's also on the list. So we'll talk about that. All right. So, all right, let's go ahead. I don't see yet this one here, this answer that came up. This one was tied for the second spot, which is training, right? Not having access to the right, or I guess, a good training program, right? So that was what a lot of people responded and saying, training. This was one that I guess I don't know that I necessarily agree with per se. I think that training exists all around us, whether your brokerage covers it or it doesn't. I think that, it is each of us as agents, it's our responsibility to go out there and seek out the training and find it, because it exists. I promise you. I mean, just on YouTube alone, all of the training you could ever need or want exists. Um, so it's one of those things where even if, your brokerage is like, oh, we don't do training, or, they might do a training every week or something like that, and it's not what you need, you can find what it is you need. So, I mean, I kind of combat that answer, even though it was the number 2 answer. A lot of people did say it. I think that's almost like a cop out a little bit by saying like, well, the training, if they're not trained, it just doesn't really register to me, because, and this isn't like, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn, but literally, I mean, I am 22 years old getting into the business, and like, just trying to figure out things on my own. So my start was a lot different than probably most agents, though. I did start in new home sales versus just in general real estate, but literally I got thrown out into a neighborhood pretty quickly, like maybe within like the first like couple weeks. And it was just a matter of like, hey, go out there and figure out how to sell. I never had a sales job before. And, but I was resourceful, right? Like I would constantly go out and, try and seek out how to become better at my craft and do what I needed to do. And yes, there were always times where I could attend trainings, and I did attend trainings. But I didn't rely on that, right? Like I wasn't waiting for somebody to train me. I thought it was my responsibility to figure this out. And if I don't figure it out, I'm going to fail. Like I just knew that. And so I think that's kind of the responsibility we all have to take as real estate agents, that like, if the training isn't good where you're at, or, you just haven't found out a good system yet, I think that's important. Like, just like building systems in your real estate business is important, whether it's lead generation systems, whether it's, your social media, like a training system for yourself is important. And we all learn differently. And so, like what works for me might be different from you. You might need to hear it from a person. You might need to watch YouTube videos. You might just need to like do things and fail at them. Like that's kind of my style, right? Like I just learn a little bit and then I just go out there and try it, and I break a bunch of stuff and then I learn from my mistakes. But, but not a lot of people can do that or want to do that. And if that's not you, you got to figure out what is you, what works for you training style wise, and then seek that out. Like if that's an issue in your business, you need to, find a solution to that. But nobody's coming to like solve that problem for you. It's up to you to, to go figure that problem out and figure out the training side of it, right? Like how you best learn. If it's from a person, then you've got to go find a person. And maybe the person doesn't charge you money. Maybe the person, you have to pay money to, right? Like a coach or something. But either way, if that is, something that is lacking in your business and you feel like you're at like a standstill because you don't know where to go next, that is just as important as, developing a lead generation or a social media strategy or, anything like that. So figure out the training side of it for you. Like I know what works for me training wise, like when I want to learn something, I know how to go out and learn it and then go put it into practice. And I think we all need to have that skill or that ability to make it far in this business. All right. And then tied for the number 2 answer, and actually, somebody said this. Let me see here. Forget who said this. Yeah, but the number 2 answer, or the tied for the number 2 answer, so this is the third one we're going to talk about, is just that they stop trying or they quit, right? Oh, it's still up on the screen. Imagine says probably quit too soon. I knew I couldn't find it. It's because I had pinned it on the screen. There it is. All right. So yeah, you probably stopped trying or you quit too soon. And, and that's one of those things where this business can take a little bit of time to get up and going, right? You may not have success right out the gates. And sometimes that can be really frustrating. And, but the thing is, this is such a long-term, very, potentially I say lucrative, not in the sense of like financial. I mean, it definitely can be financially lucrative, but just a rewarding business that, when you get in, you should just like plan to be in it for a long time, right? Like be in it for the long haul, unless you just don't like it, right? Like if you don't like the work, then don't. But I mean, like if you're just not having the success, right away within your first month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, you got to keep going, right? As long as you're showing up every day, you're enjoying the work, you're trying to become better, and you've obviously got financial, stability somewhere, in your life. You got to figure out that part of it. Um, you got to just keep going, because trust me, I mean, it's a struggle. I see agents every single day that think about getting out of the business, but then they stick it out, another week or another month or whatever. And then I get a text and they're like, I just got it, I got this deal under contract or whatever, right? And then that's just, propels them to the next one and then to the next one. And then eventually, you get that, kind of like where you get the ball rolling, you get the momentum behind you, and then it really doesn't stop ever after that. For me, like it, of course, the first year was the most difficult, but then everything after that, like I'm not worried like I did in the beginning, because I knew, my worries were kind of like, I'll say superficial. Like I knew that I could always sell enough homes to provide a living for my family, but then it was like, well, can I do more? Can I do something different? Can I do it easier? Can I do it more, effectively? But like, I really haven't had to worry about selling homes, like to be able to provide in a long time. And so that's and I've been able to have all the freedom that real estate provides. And so it's like a win-win if you can just make it through all of the kind of the junk in the beginning. And so I think, it's kind of the mindset of just knowing that and knowing what the light at the end of the tunnel is, and being able to, to keep, push through, keep working hard, do all the things we talked about as far as consistency, and keep going. Just even another week, like give it another week, give it another month, like just keep trying to, to push that as far as you can go. Because, once you give up, even if you like, you haven't given up your license, like maybe you're still like employed by a brokerage, your license is still active, but if you've given up in your mind and you're like, you're not showing up every day, you're not showing up like with the same enthusiasm, you're not confident, then you've lost, right? Because now it's just a downward spiral from there. And so you've got to always be positive and thinking in your head, like, how do I keep going? How can I make this work? This hasn't worked 5 other times before, but I'm going to do this differently on the 6th time, and it's going to work, right? And still have that same enthusiasm, and not being, like you've already lost or given up in your mind. So, all right. So that is the number 3, the third answer. Let's see, number 4. Let me see if anybody has said this yet. This kind of goes along with consistency, but I saw a couple people mention it, so I broke it out as a separate one, but it was discipline. So like I said, you got to have the discipline to be consistent, right? So number 4 was discipline. I think that's so important in this business, is to be disciplined, and, to have this, like, I've always had a feeling like, even though nobody has like been my boss in real estate, where it's like they're telling me what to do, I've always felt like, well, I've got to, I've got to, I got to be disciplined to, to myself, or, to my wife, my family, like to my, make my mom proud, my dad, like I've always feel like I got to be disciplined to like, to be better, right? Like that's just my initial feeling. And if you don't feel like that, if you don't have something that like weighs on you, that makes you feel like, I got to do something different or better, then, it's really easy just to kind of get like, kind of, lackadaisical and just not want to work or not want to do anything. And so, I mean, I think having discipline in your life and your business, just having, a feeling like, there's got to be more, like I got to keep, doing something new and different, and, reinventing myself. Like, I think that's a really important thing to put out there. So anyways, but yeah, if you don't have discipline, if you're just kind of, doing whatever you want, then yes, that is a big reason why agents get out of the business. So, yeah, so I mean, I don't know, as far as a solution for that, I feel like you just need to have a big enough why, right? Like, my why is what keeps me disciplined, right? Like I want a family, I want my family to have freedom, and I want to be able to live the lifestyle that I want. I like being able to go and buy things whenever I need it, eat dinners whenever I want to go out. Like there's enough, reason for me. I've experienced, a taste of it. I keep it going. Like I'm happy with my lifestyle. I don't want to ever lose that lifestyle. And so that for me is kind of like my why, my motivation. And all right, number five. Yeah, this is number five. Is not putting in the work. And I also group this together with expectations, right? Somebody else said expectations. I kind of put those two together. Is that, I think sometimes when agents get into the business, our expectations is that it's going to be easier than it is. Not that it's easy. I don't think anybody gets into this business thinking like real estate's easy. But I do think a lot of people think that it's going to be easier than it actually is, right? Especially if agents, don't have any prior experience with sales, or with networking and growing a group, of people, a community essentially. So like if you have no skills of that, and you get into the business just because other people are successful and they might make it seem easy, I think that those expectations can certainly lead people to fail out of real estate really quickly. I mean, so I think the solution to not putting in the work, is have different expectations. Like, if this is the first time you're hearing this, I hope I can change your expectations in telling you that this is not an easy business, right? Real estate is a very difficult business. The only reason why, I think some people push through is because it can provide such a, great life when you are doing well at it, right? And so if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for the freedom, if it wasn't for the ability to make a ton of money, then obviously a lot more people I think would get out a lot quicker. But people stick it out, and they put in the work that's required because we see what the potential is at the end of the day for this, right? So you got to come in and change your expectations. Like nobody's going to give you anything. It's the same thing as about training. Nobody's here to like hold your hand and like make sure that you're successful. It doesn't matter. It's not on your broker. It's not on your friend. It's not on even like your mentor or your coach. It's not on them. It's only on you, to do well at this. And nobody is going to make you be successful except for yourself. And so you have to put in the work, show up every day, be consistent, fail. It's okay to fail. Like that's, I don't think there's any, nobody fails as a real estate agent because they failed at, one thing or two things, one or two times. You fail because, you just either, you don't try, you don't try enough things, you don't change, what your approach is. There's a lot of different things like that. But if you never get started or you never really, put your full effort out there, you don't put in the work, then that's of course a recipe for failure. But just failing here and there, like I've failed so many times in my career, that doesn't make you fail, right? So just go out there and do stuff, right? Put in the work and do it. But yeah, and then make sure that just expectations wise, that you just know it's gonna be a very tough start, especially in the first year. Years 1 to 2 maybe is a little bit easier. It's still somewhat fairly difficult, year 1 to 2, and that's assuming you started having some success year one. But year 1 to 2 might still be a little difficult. But you stick it out through those first 2 years. Years 3 is easier, 4 is easier, 5 is easier. You start building your database, your book of business. You start building your brand. You start having your systems in place. All these things get so much easier, and then it's just routine, right? And then so it takes you, the same amount of time to sell 40 homes that it probably took you to sell 8 homes, back when you first started. And your money is, you're making more money, less time. That's when you start really appreciating the life and the lifestyle. And then at that point, all it's a matter of is being able to kind of stick with the times, make sure that you're relevant, make sure that you're still doing the things that are, working, during that time frame. But like you've already got, a lot of goodwill built up to where it's going to be like you might, if the market, hurts or something, you might lose 20%, 30%. 40%, right? Which, yeah, that stinks. But if you're making, good amount of money, you can still survive through that, right? And so that's where we got to get each agent, right? Like that's where you got to get to, is where you're at that point, where you just feel confident that no matter what, your bills are paid, like, your systems are working. And then you're just, trying to stay relevant, stay on top as far as the new trends, different lead generation things, of that nature, and just constantly being efficient. Customer service is a big one too. So, all right. Here we go. Let's see. We got a couple other people chiming in. Let's see. There we go. Terry says, absolutely. The business 100%. Let's see. Oakland Realty TV says lack of motivation. Yep, definitely. That's, that has a lot to do with like discipline as well. Lack of focus. Yep. Another one, being focused. I will say, this is one of those things for me. What has helped me to be, I feel, successful in the business is my ability to focus almost to a fault, right? Like when I get into something, like I go all in, like, like that might consume my life for the next 2 weeks or month or 2 days, right? Like but it just depends on like what it is. But like everything else almost goes out the window when I try to focus on something. And so that's really good. It's certainly helped me. But also it can sometimes be bad because if you're not disciplined, if you're not consistent and you don't have systems in place to hold you accountable, then, being extremely focused can sometimes let you drop the ball in other aspects. But I think that the pros of it outweigh the cons of it, because you can build systems around keeping all the other stuff going. But the focus, like I don't want to stop doing something, or I don't give up on doing something until like I figured it out, or until like I know if I want to keep doing it or not. Like I don't want to have a lot of plates spinning in the air, that I started but I didn't finish, and and I'm just unsure of how these things are going to play out. Like I like to see it all the way through, until it's done, and then and then I can either move on to the next thing, or I've built a system around that so it can keep on going. But that's kind of how I how I built my business. And I think, yes, having a lack of focus, that actually wasn't one of the answers yet, but I thought that was a good one, so I wanted to put it up there. All right, let's see here. All right. We've got the next one here is failing to plan. That is a good one. Failing to plan is up there on the list. It's our number 6 is failing to plan. I think, this is where, again, it's, talking about like efficiency and stuff. It's definitely, I will say, failing to plan can cause agents to get out of the business completely. However, I'll caveat that with saying, if an agent is just very active, like, you're just, constantly working, you're, banging your head up against the wall, you're trying new things. Even if you don't have a plan, I think that agent will still be successful. Now, they'll be much more efficient and they'll be much more successful once they have a plan, once they can kind of have that 30,000, foot view into their business and actually like build out a plan. But, if you even have just a basic idea of what you're going to do for the next 30 to 60 days and you just actually do it, then, you may not need the whole like thought through plan, right? Like it's just a matter of like, hey, I'm going to go, after my sphere of influence. I'm going to go after for sale by owners. I'm going to go do open houses. And then it's just like go and execute on it, right? Like at the top of your game, like, however much you can, go into that, then, that's the basics of a plan, right? Like if you have that at least, and you keep going at it, then you're going to be somewhat successful. Now, once you start to like have success and you have some time to like kind of like look back and say, like, okay, what works good, what doesn't work good, and you can start developing your plan even more, then yeah, I think that you definitely can be more successful. But if you don't have any plan and you're just kind of like, trying new things every day and you're not really taking anything into, like, maximum, like you're not maximizing anything, then yeah, in that sense of the word, like failing to plan, then yeah, for sure, agents can fail out, right? You got to have some focus, plan, whatever you want to call it, in the beginning, especially just to like do one thing really well or try to do it really well, right? So just do one thing and try to do it really well. That's as much of a plan as you might need to get going. Any more than that, if you start trying to make it, because the other side could be true as well, where you try and put this whole big plan together before you have any kind of business or, you've done anything, and it's too complex, it demotivates you, it's not, possible for you to even, hit that plan. And then it's just more confusing than anything. That could also be, a bad thing, right? Like a negative. And so I think, yeah, have a plan, but just make it a simple plan, basic of like, hey, I'm going to, go all in on this strategy to begin with, and then we'll reevaluate here in the next 30, 60, 90 days and see how it's going. All right. Let's see here. We've got the next one, number 7, no mentor. Yes, this can certainly be a reason why agents fail out of the business. I do strongly believe in having a mentor, having a coach, whatever you want to call it. Just having an accountability partner, right? Like that that one person may make the difference between you staying in this business long term and not being in the business at all, right? So I think, if you don't have somebody, and ideally you want somebody who is having success, who has had more success than you, right? So like your best friend may have gotten into the business at the same time as you, and y'all might both be new agents. And yes, it's fun to have conversations with that person. And maybe sometimes they have a win, maybe sometimes you have a win. It's good to have that person too. But I think it's also very important to have a person who has done what you hope to do, right? Like they've already done, they've been where you're at, and then now they've gotten further than where you're at, and they're willing to help you, right? Like that is a key person that you need to have. And you got to make sure too that they did it like it's relevant, right? Like, I mean, sometimes a lot of people think that like their broker is like their mentor or their coach. And it's like, no, not really. I mean, a lot of times, maybe if you find the right person, then yes, that could be true. But most of the time, like your broker, well, especially if they've been a broker for a while, their like focus is on completely different things than yours, right? Like theirs is on managing agents and recruiting and, finances and, HR issues and all sorts of, making sure we're compliant and stuff like that, right? Like, so they're not dealing necessarily with all the same stuff that you might need to be dealing with. And if they are, chances are they're probably pretty busy and they probably don't have a lot of time to help you, with the amount of help that you need. Right. And so now I'm just saying this is generalities, right? This is kind of the general way things are. Now, it may not be true in every sense of the, every case, but really what you may need is, like I said, a mentor or a coach. Sometimes you have to pay for that person, which that might not be possible. I don't know. Maybe you got to figure out a way to make it work. But maybe it's just another agent that, that you look up to, they've had success and, somehow they've just wanted to be able to take you under their wing, right? For whatever reason, they've got the time and the, the motivation to do that. But, either way though, having that person, I think, is very important. You got to seek that person out, just like you have to seek out the method of training that works for you. I think that those are very important. One way that you can go get a mentor, especially like I say, if they're seasoned, they're already doing some stuff, good in their business. I mean, work for them for free if you have to, right? Like, and say, hey, I'd be willing to, to do X, Y, and Z for you, in exchange for, number one, just learning the process. Like, as I do it, I'll be learning. And then number two, like if you're willing to teach me extra stuff, the stuff that maybe I'm not doing for you as we go, just because we're gonna be working closely together, I'd be happy to do that for you, right? Like, but you've got to be creative. You got to figure it out. Again, nobody's going to come to you and say like, hey, I'm going to take you under my wing and, and just show you the ropes and do all this stuff for you. Not usually, right? Like you got to be creative. You got to go seek that person out. You got to find a creative way to make it a win-win for both parties. And then you've got to kind of like make it happen, right? Don't just like propose the idea like, hey, it'd be nice. Like, have you ever thought of mentoring, or have you ever thought of coaching? Like, do you think you might coach me? Like, I mean, maybe sometimes people will be like, yeah, sure. Like, let's do it. But like, I think you got to be a little more creative than that. You got to be a little bit more forceful. Like, hey, I really respect your business. I would love to build a business the same way you have. It seems like you're doing it the right way. Are there any things that, I can do for you for free? Like if I just show up, and do, anything at your next open house with you, like, don't just be like, I'll go do an open house for you, because you don't really learn that way. Right. Or at showings, just go to their house. Hey, can I, shadow you on a day at your house to see like when you make calls, any of this kind of stuff, and help in any way. Right. Like maybe you got to be creative and do that. But either way, you have to probably take the bull by the horns and like go after and do it, because nobody's going to, usually offer that to you. All right, let's see here. Next one is no systems, not having any systems. Yes, I will say that that is possibly a reason why people could fail out of the business, is not having systems. It's, I would say though, it's kind of like up there with failing to plan. I think that, systems help you do things better when you're already kind of working when you're already working as efficiently as you can. Then, when you create a system that can help you get more results out of your time and efforts. But in the beginning, I mean, like, having a basic system is essentially just like a basic plan, is going to be more than enough to get get you off the ground, like to get your first few deals. And so, I wouldn't worry like that. That's the one thing that sometimes when I talk to agents, they feel like is holding them back, right? They're like, I just don't have the systems. No, I mean, I feel like when agents say like, I don't have the systems, it's almost like they're trying to use the systems as a scapegoat, right? For like maybe their lack of effort, right? Like, if you like, you don't need systems, you need hard work. You got to go out there and, and if you don't have the systems, because number one, you didn't build the systems, like nobody needs to give you the systems to be successful. You got to go out there and put work in. And then as you do the work, the systems will get created, right? Because you're like, nobody wants to work inefficiently, right? So like when you do things over and over and over, you start to find ways to do them more efficiently. And that's how the systems get built, right? And so like it starts with doing the work, and then the systems will start to come, right? And so if you don't have the systems, it's usually because you aren't doing the work. And that is why, people, I would say, more often will fail out of the business. All right. Let's see. The next one is fear. This is a good one. I think fear is really important to talk about. If you are afraid of doing certain things in the business, whether it's calling people, whether it's putting yourself out there, doing open houses, meeting with people, I mean, there's really not an easy way to solve this other than saying, either A, the business isn't right for you, or B, you've just got to overcome your fear by doing what you're afraid of multiple times over. Like, keep doing it, right? Like, and it's not going to feel comfortable. It's not going to feel good. You may hate it. And if you hate it enough, then yeah, you're probably going to get out of the business. But if you're afraid to fail, if you're afraid to try things, if you're afraid to talk to people, all of those things are things that as an agent we have to do, right? Like, there's not really a way to get around trying new things. Like, I mean, like, as an agent, a new agent, the only way you're going to get successful is to try new things and to fail at stuff and to look silly and to make mistakes in front of clients and to, just to go through all the things that agents have to go through, right? Like, there's just no shortcut to that. And if the fear cripples you enough to where you don't take action, then you will be out of the business. There's no other way to kind of get around that. You can't hire somebody to do the things that you're afraid of, especially like in the beginning when you don't really have a lot of money. At some point, like, of course, if let's say that you don't like, I don't know, the lead generation prospecting aspect of it. I mean, you could pay for advertisements and get, leads coming into you, but you still got to call them, or you could obviously hire an ISA company to even do some of that stuff for you. But all this stuff is like money, right? So, I mean, there's ways that you can kind of maybe do some of the stuff that you're not that you're fearful of. But ultimately, it's going to come down to the point where, like, I think most of the time when somebody's crippled in fear of like not to the point where they don't do something, like, calling somebody that maybe they're afraid to call, or, whatever that might be, that's going to show up in other aspects of their business. So just that trait, or like, that is going to show up no matter what you do. Even if you try and solve that problem in other avenues, it's going to really hinder you long term. Like, you've got to just be willing to overcome some of these fears in your business. Otherwise, you will be stopped at some point in real estate. And so, yeah, so I mean, there's not like an easy way to do it, just in my opinion, as far as fear goes, than just to do it multiple times, like, go through it, put yourself in those positions, those tough, challenging positions. And then it does get easier. Like, that's the nice thing about fear, is that like you can overcome your fear. It just takes you doing it. multiple times over, maybe practicing if it's like a, script thing, or just like a, calling or talking to people. If it's like a, man, I'm just afraid to like put myself out there on social media. Like you just got to go out there and put yourself out on social media. I mean, there's just no other way to get around that, but that's, the only way you can really do that. So the next one, and this, I should probably just put this with, no mentor, is not surrounding yourselves with the right people, is what the next person said. And we've already talked about that, not surrounding yourself with the right people. If you're not surrounding yourself with anybody, then that's a bad thing. If you're not surrounding yourself with agents who are, motivated, trying new things, successful, then yeah, that's going to bring you down as well. So, I mean, it might be nice to like talk to agents that are at the same level as you, or maybe, if you're not having success, sometimes misery loves company, right? And you find somebody else who's not having success. You're like, oh, I like this person, right? Like we get along because, like they're not judging me, or they're not, they're at the same spot as me. Like, yeah, that might be easy, but that might not be what's good for your business. And so you got to seek out the people that are doing well, even if it might seem intimidating, to approach them, or, oh, this person's not going to help me. Like you got to seek those people out that are, doing more than what you're doing. And so that way you can kind of put yourself in those circles, and hopefully, that will bring you up, above where, as far as to your goals. All right. Adversity. This is another good one. I would say, this definitely can be a reason why agents get out of the business, is adversity. So, because I can promise you with any agent, there is going to be a time in your career, multiple times, that you're going to face adversity. And if you're not prepared to deal with adversity, then you are going to stop trying or quit too soon, right? Which was another reason why agents get out of the business. And so, because like it could be something like an issue you deal with your broker. It could be an issue you deal with a client. It could be an issue that you deal with a lead generation source, right? Adversity that shows up in any of those avenues. And if you're not prepared, if you don't have the mindset to be strong enough to say like, hey, like, I get it. That was tough. That was really hard. Or this is really hard if you're going through it right, at that moment. But you know what? It's going to pass. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to be stronger moving forward beyond it. Like that's how you have to just like build up your mentality to where when that adversity shows up, I mean, I don't want to say like you can laugh it off, but you just kind of like know, like, hey, like this is one of those times, like, Kyle said it was going to be super hard at, certain points in time. And this is one of those times, right? And you're going to face many of those throughout your career. And especially like if it's in the beginning of your career and you face that, it can certainly be a reason why you say, you know what, this is too hard, or it's not worth it, right? Like you hear a lot of agents say like, I just, it's not worth it. Like, I don't really, I don't like this. It's too hard, whatever, right? Like whatever the excuse is, it's usually because, adversity sets in, and you either, you have two decisions to make, right? Like you can either push through it and move forward, or you can let that be too much and get out and just stop. Right. So, and hopefully you keep pushing on and going forward. But that is certainly one. So just having the right mindset, having the right people around you that you can bounce off like what that adversity is, hear, positive stories about how people also maybe face that same thing and how they dealt with it. Like, don't just face it alone and then be like, oh, like, then that's when it seems overwhelming. But if you, can get other people to kind of share their stories or whatever, then it's enough usually to help you maybe push through and keep going. All right. Here's a big one. I didn't see this answer very often. Actually, it only came up one time, but I thought it would have came up more, is finances. I think a lot of times agents get into the business ill-prepared financially to stick it out long-term with a real estate career. I think that, getting into real estate, like we already talked about, it takes a while, right? It takes a few months at minimum, usually, right? Like a few months, maybe a year even before you can like make really enough money to pay the bills. And, and if you don't have your financial household in order to be prepared for that, I think that's a huge reason why agents fail. I think number one, even before, you get to that point where it's like, I just have to go take another job. I can't even do another day of real estate because I won't be able to pay my rent next month or pay my mortgage. Even before you get to that point, if financial stress is causing you concern in your real estate business, it's going to show up, right? It's going to be hard for you to do anything because now you're operating out of fear and you're not operating out of like confidence and like fun and joy and all of the positive things that you want to be operating out of. And so clients, potential clients, leads, they'll smell that and they feel that coming off of you, right? And so so this might not even, like, you might not even know that it's a financial thing right away. You might just think, oh, like I'm not closing these leads, or I'm not getting any success, like social media is not working out for me. Well, if you think about it, and if you were financially stressed or something like this, and you're operating out of a fear kind of mentality, then you may not even realize it, but that's what's crippling you from having success. And so I think that a lot more agents get out of the business because of finances, when they may not even have realized that that was the root cause of it all. And so really coming into the business with a financial system, financial plan already in place, whether you've got savings, whether you can take, you've access to a line of credit or some kind of a loan, maybe you can tap into home equity, whatever it is you might have, like, know that you've got that buffer, right? And you've got a long runway, or as long of a runway as you can have. But if you're like, I've got to make this work in 3 months or else I can't pay my bills, that's usually not a recipe for success in real estate. You've got to have some kind of either plan, or you got to have the savings ready to go to where you're not coming into the business already stressed out about money. And then the other thing too is you've got to have the money for the ability to execute on ideas that you have. Like, you got to be willing to take risks and invest in your business if you think that it's worth it. Like, I've always operated kind of with like my gut feeling. And if I feel like something is going to work out, I have no problem investing in it, right? Even if it means I've got to, take out credit or use resources that I don't have at the time. Like, if I'm willing to put myself out there because I believe in the idea, like, I'm going to do that. But if you don't even have the money to execute on things that you want to do that you think would be successful for you, then you're already going to think like, man, I can't do this business. Like, I don't have the money, I'm not having success. I'm not going to get the money. Right. Like, and you just can't, you're pretty much crippled at that point. And so, not saying you have to be, a millionaire or, have a ton of money in the bank, but you got to have enough money to operate, right? Like, this is a business. You are running a business. You wouldn't be able to go start up a McDonald's franchise business with $0, right? Like, you got to have a money, you got to have an investment to be able to make. And so you got to come into this business with that same kind of idea that, like, this is a business. It's going to take an investment, and it's usually more of an investment than just paying for your real estate license. Like, if all you have is enough is just to pay for your real estate license and maybe a few months of your brokerage dues, like, that's a very difficult proposition to have success for. So, all right, let's see the next one. So the solution, because again, I always want to provide the solutions, maybe in that case, you do have to postpone what you're doing in real estate, right? Like, go take a job, save money, build up the bank account, whatever it is, or figure out a way that you can get access to funds, to where you're not operating from fear. So like so maybe it's a hiatus. So you got to take 6 months out, a year out, right? And then come back in when you are operating with, with some kind of money for an investment. All right. Lack of follow-up. This is number 14 is the lack of follow-up. So you can see there's a lot of reasons why agents fail out of the business, right? But there's solutions to all of these. Okay, so that's the positive thing. In all of these, the solution has to do with your mindset and how you think about it, right? Like, you can tell, if you have a positive mindset, if you're the type that's like, I'm going to figure out the solution to anything, then like none of these things really matter. Like, you're going to figure it out at some point in time. May not be next month that you start crushing it just because you have a great mindset, but if you have a great mindset, you will figure it out over time. But yes, the lack of follow-up, I think, sometimes we underestimate the amount of follow-up that's required to have success in real estate. You may be an amazing person, at the same time, if you don't follow up very, consistently, then you will find that people will buy homes without you, and or that you just miss opportunities left and right. And you don't want to be that agent saying like, man, like, if I would have just did this, or if I would have just done that, if I would have followed up a little bit more, if I would have remembered to follow up with this person, I probably would have gotten that deal. Like, over follow up. Like, that's the thing, is like, I always, like, people say like, oh, like, how much is how many times is the right amount to follow up with people? And I say, like, follow up as much as you possibly can until the point where, like, literally, it's getting annoying to them. Like you don't want to annoy people, obviously, but like, I mean, I don't think, especially if it's like your sphere of influence, I follow up with people more than once a month. I mean, once a month is like if they're just in my sphere and I'm just, like they're not actively looking to buy a house or sell a house. I'm constantly still talking to people, right? Like at least once a month. But if somebody's like on my radar, like if like they've told me they're buying like once a week minimum, maybe a couple times a week, just checking in, sending them, different things like that's relevant to them. You can't over follow up, in my opinion, as long as you're bringing value to that person, right? So like you got to, so that may be what it is. If you're thinking like, well, I'm just going to annoy this person. Well, if you're not adding value to them, then maybe you are just annoying them. But like if you have something new to bring to them that's relevant to them, it's much more difficult to over follow up with somebody. So just kind of re-strategize, refigure out what you need to do to follow up in the right amount of time, the right amount of times with somebody, and stay relevant to them. So number 15, being a secret agent. So we all know there's a lot of secret agents out there that, they get their real estate license and for one reason or another, they, don't want to tell anybody, right? Like maybe they have another job. They don't want their boss to find out. Maybe they're just nervous of what their friends will think. There's all those reasons why you hear people, it's like they get their license, but then, they're not active on social. They're not like calling their sphere of influence. It's like, are you trying to like hamstring yourself even more than it is? Like, it's already difficult to be a real estate agent if you aren't telling everybody, everybody you come in contact with that you're a real estate agent. You're going to, I mean, that's essentially the reason why you're going to fail out of this business. And so you can't be afraid to tell people. And if you're in a position where it's not the right time to tell people that you're in real estate because whatever your reason is, then you may need to reevaluate being a real estate agent, right? Like, you can't be like a lukewarm real estate agent. It really doesn't work that way. It's going to be more difficult. It's going to be more frustrating. And then ultimately you're just going to waste a lot of time and a lot of effort for nothing. I think you either, go all in or you don't, just pick and choose what you want to do. Now, I'm not saying like, you can't be a part-time agent. If you are a part-time agent, you're working your other job, but you're over here and you're, working real estate just as hard, if not harder, you're telling people you're doing your business, then that's fine. Like go do that. But if you're like, oh, well, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this yet because of X, Y, Z, well, then maybe you just need to wait until you can, fully put your time and your effort into it. So, and then, number 16 this is the last one, man, time-wise, this was like on, right on. So, number 16 is forgetting their business owners. So you figure, if like we mentioned, there's a lot of things that comes along with being a business owner. Number one, having an investment to be able to make into your business, financially and time-wise, right? Like if you're a business owner, like I don't know why I always think of this, but like if I went and purchased a pet shop, like a pet store, right? Like I have to show up to that pet store and open my door every single day, or else nobody's going to be able to come buy their, their pets or their supplies or their food, right? Like that door has got to be able to be open. So that's me showing up to my work. Number two, I got to be able to buy inventory to that pet store, right? Like I've got to front the money to be able to buy stuff so people can come and buy stuff from me at a profit for me, right? And so it's the same thing with real estate. Like you got to have those things there. Like you got to invest the money. You've got to invest the time showing up and, holding a schedule, holding yourself accountable, just like you would if you opened up a business. And then same thing, like, if you're a pet store owner, like you got to figure out like, hey, what are the supplies that they like to people like to buy? What are the types of pets people most often buy? Like, if I opened up a pet store and I stocked it with, a bunch of rats and I had no dogs or cats or birds or fish or anything like that, and I didn't know what I was doing, then of course, that's a recipe to fail. But like, you want to figure out like, well, usually people in a pet store, if I looked at other pet store owners, they usually stock it with, 70% dogs and 15% cats and then 10% fish and 5% birds. And well, that's what I'm going to stock my pet store with, right? Like, just because I know that that's like the ratios that people do. And so like, you're going to look and you're going to, be strategic about things. Like that's how you have to look at the real estate business. And if you're not doing that, you forget that you're a business owner as a real estate owner, and you got to think strategically, you got to show up, then yeah, absolutely. That is a reason why people could fail. So anyways, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I really appreciate all of you guys' time and jumping on the call. I'm going to go through the comments real quick and just seeing what we've got some questions for. So if you got a question, go ahead and throw that in there. I'll stay on for another 5 or so minutes if there's some questions. I see Kathy says, so are you saying that it may take a year and not to feel like a failure if you are trying all the things you mentioned? I'm saying that it can take a year. I'm not saying, that it may take a year. Absolutely. I'm not saying it has to. Trust me, there's a lot of agents that have success prior to a year. But that's not like always like, if it's going to take you as long as it's going to take you to figure things out, because everybody comes with a different kind of background, right? Like some people maybe, came with a big sphere of influence. Some people don't. Some people maybe come with a lot of money into the business, right? They can invest in advertising. Some people don't. All these different things. You may have sales skills. Some people don't. So there's a lot of things. So, I mean, don't feel like a failure. And if you're trying every single day, you're showing up, you're trying new things, you're investing in yourself, you're in your education and your training. It's going to take you as long as it's going to take you. But realistically, if you're trying all of these things, then yes, you should have some success within a year. Otherwise, maybe there's other external factors that are maybe, holding you back. But, I would say just, do what you're going to do and keep trying. And eventually you will figure out like what is, your niche, like what is, what works for you. So, all right. Let's see here. Michael says, brand new agent, just signed with Coldwell Banker, 2 mentors available and trying to choose. One was an agent for 30 years and mentors full time. Other is still an agent and also mentors. Suggestions. Good question, Michael. What I would say here is number one, have you interviewed both of them? And, and what is kind of your gut feeling? What do you, what's kind of the feeling you get when you talk to them, as far as like whose personality do you line up with? Because that's the other part of it too, is like somebody might have been successful for 30 years, but maybe they were successful doing stuff that you don't want to do, or you're not willing to do, or their style is just different than yours. I think that is almost a little bit more important than anything. Now, the other one, if they're still an agent, there's a lot of caveats there. Like, so it says other is still an agent and also mentors. Are they still a successful agent? Like, are they having success in their business? And I'm not talking like they got to be the top agent in your brokerage or in your market, but like, are they selling what you hope to sell, right? Like, or more, right? Like, have they sold, if your goal is to sell 5 million in a year in volume, have they sold 5 million, right? Have they sold 10 million, if that's your goal? So like, if that is the case and they're still in it, then I think that's great. Now, so just because somebody was an agent for 30 years, I wouldn't discount that. There's a lot of value, and real estate for the most part, doesn't change long-term. I mean, things that worked 30 years ago, whether it's sphere of influence, open houses people still did back then. Like, I'm sure this agent that was an agent for 30 years does things that are still relevant today. Now, maybe they're not top in their class on social media or something like that. But, if that's not a big part of your business, what you want it to be, then I wouldn't, discount that credibility, that 30 years. And then same thing with that agent that's still in the business, you'd really want to kind of like make sure, how much effort they can give to you, right? Like, as far as mentorship, like ask them like, hey, what does mentorship look like to you? How often do we meet? How often do we talk? What do we do when we, meet? And I'll just try and figure that out and kind of, have all that stuff kind of nailed down. And then whatever you get as far as, the better feeling between those two, I think is the one you go with. And, and don't worry, don't second guess or worry about it. Just, make the decision with your gut, go with, the best option that's presented to you, and then keep going and keep working. So hope that helps. All right, let's see. My mom, I love it. Love you, Mom. So proud of you. Thank you. All right. Oh, Kathy, I love it. Stacy, I don't blame you. Man, you're gonna make me blush on camera. All right, let's see. Marissa, just tuning in, new agent here, and it's been rough. Hey, I get it. It's a rough business. If you got any questions, send me a DM on Instagram. As far as any questions you've got, that's the best way to get a hold of me for anybody watching this. If you've any questions or you're just like, hey, I'm at my wit's end. What do I do next? Tell me a little bit of a background, what you've done, what you've tried, tell me what your goals are, what you're hoping to do, what you've worked on. And, and I'll respond to you. It's one of those things, like I respond to all my DMs as long as, of course it's like a legit, I get a lot of spam stuff now too, but legit DMs, people who've actually thought through like what they send me. I'll respond back. If somebody just is like, hey, I'm a new agent, what do you recommend that I do? Like, I mean, that's a little, like I would say, hey, you need to go watch this video, and usually I'll just respond with a link to one of my videos that talks about being a new agent. But if you're like, hey, I've done XYZ, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm failing with, this is what I'm succeeding with, this is my, this is what I've done in the past, I'll give you a thought out answer. So, if you want to respond, and send me a DM on Instagram, I'm happy to help out any way that I can. So, all right. Well, guys, that brings us to the top of the hour, a little past. But I thank you so much for your time, and I will be back here next Tuesday. Just as a little teaser, just so you guys know, I've been working on something behind the scenes with a good buddy of mine that you guys have seen a couple times now on this Tuesday call, Blake, and we will be rolling out some new courses here pretty soon. So just as a kind of I'm not going to say exactly what the courses are yet, or where you're going to find them, all that kind of stuff. But I have been working behind the scenes on that stuff, and so we're going to be super excited to announce that. But that's going to be coming closer to the 1st of November. So we'll be making some more posts and some more stuff about that in October, and also the idea of some coaching will be coming down the pipe as well. So I've been having a lot of people reaching out, asking about coaching or mentorship, by me or by, a team of mine. And so, to this day, I've never done that, right? I've never actually coached somebody, one-on-one, or I've never built a coaching business. I just do all my stuff for free on YouTube pretty much, right? And so, but now that's actually going to be coming around. So keep your eye out for that. If you are interested, you could actually even just send me a message just so I can kind of start making a little list of those who might be interested, but we'll be putting more info about that coming out in October. And like I say, all of this stuff is going to kind of start rolling out in the 1st of November. So I hope everybody has an amazing rest of the week. Until I talk to you guys next week, have a good one. See you later. Bye.